Welcome to the Hardtech Podcast.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the Hardtech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Harakas, with my usual suspect, Grant Chapman.
How's it going, everybody?
CEO of Glassport, a hardtech product development firm here in Indianapolis. And today we have a super exciting guest from a very cool company, Ashley Phillips, the head of product for Aura. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Aura, they are really transforming how families connect through photos. And Ashley, we'd love to just get a quick overview of the company.
Sure. So Aura Frames makes Wi-Fi enabled photo frames. We allow people to connect and set up their photo frames via an app. You can invite multiple people to a frame, add photos and videos to those frames that then appear on the frame. They shuffle through continuously. You may see some of these on Amazon. These are really, Aura really stands, they're really the best. They really stand above in this category. They're beautiful. They're beautifully designed. Wirecutter recommends 3 digital photo frames. Aura makes all 3 of them. So it is really an amazing product. And our mission, kind of referenced this earlier, but our mission really is built around connecting friends and families and celebrating the memories in their lives. And Aura does that with hardware, but in a pretty unique way.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, Aura is in the 9 figures in terms of the size of organization. So they really are head and shoulders above the competition in terms of the quality of product that they're getting out there. Ashley, with your background, when we were having our initial conversations, you come from the world of software. Much like myself, I come from the world of software and jumped in the world of hardware and hard tech. Sort of why Aura? Why make that move from software over to the physical world?
I've thought about this a lot, and people have asked me this a lot, particularly with my background. I've been working in product development for over 15 years, and primarily that's been in consumer-facing products, primarily payments and marketplaces, which is obviously very different from the company and the product that I just described. So really what drew me to Aura, I think, is that mission that I was just talking about. It's pretty rare air to be able to work for a company and work for a product that serves millions of users who are very, very happy in a way that is not selling their data, taking something from them, leveraging them as people in some way, but is like truly a joy delivery device. And I think that part of it for me was enough. Separately, I also happen to know some folks who already worked at Aura, who are amazing people and that I've worked with, who also worked primarily in software in years past and drew me in. I think the other thing too, which we'll talk a little bit about today, is, you don't know what you don't know. And hardware development is vastly different than software development. And I think, one thing for me, having that ability to be able to learn and having something that you don't know and having a skill set, like a product management skill set, and being able to bring that to something new and certainly challenging is pretty exciting and was interesting to me in that way.
No, that's awesome. It's one of those things that the jump into the hardware space is always like the first jump into the cold pool. Like once you're in it, you love it. Like it's a fun place to be, but like this is a shock to the system because everything they use the same vernacular, they have the same gates, milestones, right? But the way they all interconnect is so much more reliant on each other, right? In software, if you miss a thing or there's a bug, that's called a software update. That's no big deal. In hardware, we call those recalls, and those are really painful. So, changing that mentality of like test gets a lot more important than dev. Whereas in software, you can use your users as testers and fix it really quick so no one really gets upset, and it's just a wild world. But the one thing I wanted to touch on outside of the hard tech space is something you brought up as to why you enjoy working for Aura. And you guys are a hardware and software company, right? You have a digital platform that allows your hardware to do its magic, or vice versa. The hardware enables the digital platform to do its magic, however you want to phrase that. But what you said is really critical. So many digital platforms make the user the product, right? Either their data or their usage or their advertisements or convince them to buy other things. But what you described, and I didn't plant this question, so I just want to touch on it, and I think it's really powerful, you guys make an experience worth paying for, and people are willing to give you guys enough capital, whether it's the sale price of the frame, if you guys have a subscription, to support that because you bring enough utility as the product. Very, very few connected products today have that mentality alone, that we make something good enough that the market's willing to pay for it outright. We don't have to do any Trojan horse methods of making money or, promising a data lake for someone else later. I think that is just from a integrity and caliber of product speaks heads and shoulders above any other product of how cool the tech might be or how great your software stack is. Like, that's just incredible.
It is, and it feels so good. And I think the other thing for us then is it makes it essential for us, like as we're building, software, as we're building hardware, and as we're kind of thinking, that mission that I mentioned before of, we are bringing friends and family together to celebrate, their memories through photos. That's a pretty broad mission, and right now we're doing that with hardware, or we're doing it with a specific set of hardware. What is it? What could that look like beyond that? And so, as we kind of think about those things, or any new hardware development or any new product development at all, I think everyone at the company, and this comes from the founders certainly, feels a real responsibility to the users we have today and to our, future customers to really be able to deliver on that. We don't charge a subscription for any of our services, or for photo storage or anything like that. It comes up, as you can imagine, all the time as there's another potential revenue.
I was just I'm mind blown because I assumed there was at least some amount of subscription to upgrade how many photos you upload.
And we've made a very conscious decision, and again, that comes from the founders, a conscious decision not to do that because we don't want to. And we believe in the value of the product, and in the value of the product for customers. And that has, that has manifested itself in the popularity of the product. About 40 to 50% of our revenue comes from existing users. So there is so funny to say, but there is a network effect with this hardware product that has happened. It's very clear from the data, from our from over the past 7 or 8 years, and you can really see it. It starts as, a family member purchases it, purchases as a gift for another family member. They love it. And that kind of feedback loop of joy, not to be a cheeseball, but it's real. When you talk to customers, it's so heartwarming. When you talk,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You guys are really capturing, there's nothing more special than the photos that you have on your wall or the photos of your family. And you guys are creating that vehicle to share that amongst the family, in grandma's kitchen, that goes through the family photos and things like that. I feel like another area where you guys have really excelled and created that competitive advantage specific to the product is that, unlike some of the competitors in the space, one of the reasons we really like to talk to Aura is because you guys do everything in-house when it comes to the engineering. And that gives you guys a kind of unique strategic advantage. Industrial design, firmware, mechanical, this is all in-house across your different locations. And so can you speak a little bit into that and how that gives you guys the ability to really continue to deliver on that hardware experience for the user?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit about the beginning about how hardware is so different from software development. And, often with software, if there's not often, whenever there's a bug in the software, it's very easy, to fix, and you can be very agile. Hardware is certainly a different time horizon. We certainly have a different time horizon for that. However, at Aura, I think Aura is even different because of as an outcome of having incredible firmware, hardware, industrial design, all in-house, we are able to be more agile. We introduced a frame, a 12-inch frame called Aspen. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Go buy it. Earlier this year, and we were able to turn that around in about 9 months, which is pretty. Again, I still feel like I have so much to learn, and I'm very new. So I'm 9 months is so long. But on a hardware life cycle, everyone at the company was telling me, no, this is actually incredibly, incredibly fast. And so being able to do that, I think, does a couple of things for us. One, we can be incredibly agile, which is really important for us. And then two, we are able to give put an enormous amount of energy into like a level of detail that, I can't speak to what other companies do, but I know that we're able to do. So like we have this incredible industrial design team in New York with that is constantly like 3D printing and prototyping everything and looking at materials and trying to figure out both what can deliver the most, say, premium experience, but also like, you have to look ahead for things, for things, like design trends and that type of thing. So anyway, kind of coming back to the question, it really enables us to like, I think, have a level of quality, both in terms of design, both in terms of, both in terms of like the hardware and the software that we're building across those 3 different offices, New York, San Francisco, and Shenzhen, and remain very close to manufacturing. We have folks obviously we have the office in Shenzhen, and then we have who are located close to, our manufacturing partners. And then we have members from the team here that are going to those manufacturing partners 3 or 4 times a year. So it is like a constant checking in, communication. It's certainly not we're going to pass this over and we'll see what comes out at the other end of it and cross our fingers and toes. It's pretty incredible. And the company itself is very committed to the highest quality there.
No, that's amazing. And I think that just to touch on one thing, 9 months for a hardware product is like A+ in the report card, platinum award. Like, please, other humans listening to this, don't expect 9 months in a hardware product. That is light speed from people that have a vertically integrated team that have done it more than once. So you guys get that. That's the other benefit of being that vertically integrated, having that experience, is you guys can see into the future and know what you need to do by when. Because unlike software, where you can do a lot of parallel work and work on submodules, hardware has gates that you can't test everything together until it's all ready, right? So you guys can drive those gates at very known points in time and cut a feature if it's going to delay a gate. And you guys have the maturity of a brand to say, we'll just put that in next year's product. This isn't ship or die, right? This is ship the best product we can now, knowing that we have the next gen is coming down the line and we can kind of blend these all together. But the one question that I wanted to ask in all of this that I see from the outside, and I want to get, if you also think this is true, is your agency in design and delivery of an experience to your customers is owned by you guys. There's like 3 tiers, just for all the listeners. There's like 3 tiers in this space of consumer electronics. You can do very vertically integrated like Aura does. You can do what I'm going to call partially vertically integrated, where you might manage a handful of vendors that do different things. And then the third option is like an ODM or JDM development, where another party is making this product and you're maybe white labeling it or adding a feature that makes it yours, but that team is engineering, manufacturing, and delivering that to you to go sell to your clients. And I think you guys just have so much more agency than your competition, because I think in your market explicitly for Aura is ODM. A Asian factory has 10 models. Everyone in the market is white labeling those 10 models with different, maybe different faceplate, something minor change that makes 50, different competitor models on Amazon. But really, it's the same 10 guts, where you guys get to do your own features. You pick your timelines, you pick what features you're chasing, and you guys can be trend setters, not trend takers.
Yes. Wow. Absolutely. Is there a question? What's that?
Yeah. Is that assumption true? This is me doing my market research on what you guys did before the podcast. And this is what rang true for me, is just the black and white dichotomy between you and your competition, that you guys get to be trendsetters and all of your competition are trend takers. And ironically, the ODM partners are probably copying your frames from last year or the year before to sell next year to their clients. So you guys are always a model year or 2 ahead.
We definitely get to be trendsetters. That's absolutely true. And, I think, another thing that can happen in this space too is, there can be material shortages. There can be different things where if you're 100% relying on vendors for something, that can, affect or impact your timeline. I was listening yesterday we had one of our hardware engineers, talk to the product engineering team, and the product engineering team is primarily building out and working on the app, working on the mobile apps, and then also working on some of the frame software. And, he was talking through something that happened a few years ago where, so Aura has, instead of a lot of frames will have, or most frames will have a touch screen. Aura instead has a touch bar on the top of the frame. Again, intentional design, because we wanted to create this beautiful frame that was a frame and did not have tons of fingerprints on it or something that you constantly had to clean. So you really control the flow, either from the app or from the touch bar. A few years ago, we had, this is before my time, but we had a situation where the touch bar manufacturer ran into a shortage of those bars, which obviously produces like an not existential crisis, but certainly a problem for us in terms of manufacturing and making sure that we're ready for, our biggest sales times and we have, all of our frames ready to go. So what we did, and this was an engineer who was talking us through this, we in what I call his lab, at his bench, he built a touch bar himself. So built a touch bar, we were able to use the same chip, but actually built a touch bar. And so that year, we now have a mix of those. We have this homegrown touch bar that we developed on our own that we were able to cover there. And I think that like speaks to, what you were saying before around, having this team in-house and having it like, other companies might not have been able to recover in that way. And, the in-house team, it's having a team in-house, but it's also the team itself. Like we're just an incredibly scrappy group. And we run very lean and we get things done. We're only 100 people, which feels bananas to me on a daily basis. So I'm like, I could use a few more people to help out here. But it's really amazing, and I think speaks to the commitment again to what we're trying to do here for customers and what we're able to do by that in terms of like our organization.
Yeah, no, and I think that the narrative I love from that is that because you guys have great hardware engineers that have years of experience in your field, the moment they heard about a problem, they weren't like, oh no, the vendor has to fix this. They just got down to the bench like, I could make that thing the vendor makes. It, it's probably going to be more expensive because we don't have economies of scale in purchasing the raw components and putting it together. And we have to build an assembly line or find a contract manufacturer that will build just this thing for us. But it allowed you to recover quickly. And I think that's magic. I mean, for everyone listening that's trying to build a hardware company at scale, at the beginning, you often have to rely on your vendors because you can't do everything. But as you grow and you scale, get a team that can jump in and be versatile and understand what your vendors are providing you. So if you need to go pivot or make a choice, that is huge. So actually, that is I was not expecting that story, and that is awesome.
I just heard it yesterday, and I was like, oh, great story. I'm going to use that tomorrow.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. We engineered ourselves out of a supply chain shortage, not supply chain managed our way out of a supply chain shortage. That is just such a cool takeaway.
I suppose adding to that, coming from the world of software, Grant mentioned it earlier, you did as well, in terms of you can have, a software update if you push out a line of code that doesn't work. You have a bug or what have you. In the hardware space, of course, you have, recalls. We joke about that quite often. Even in your experience so far at Aura, have there been like the hardware stakes are a bit higher? And so have you experienced any recalls? Have you kind of seen what it really takes to kind of dig your... This was an example of one where it went really well, but are there examples where maybe that didn't go as well, but was a difficult thing to get over?
We haven't had recalls, but I think, one thing that I learned and didn't, kind of related to, let's talk about OTAs for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So I assume people who listen to this know this, but I don't know. So for those who don't know, OTA refers to like over-the-air firmware updates that you're doing to a piece of hardware. And at Aura, obviously, we can do those with the frames. We have frames that are still, this is also like speaks to the quality of the product itself. We have frames that are 7 years old that are still out in the wild and operating, still online, still serving photos. Part of the way that we're able to do that is, to keep to keep the firmware up to date, we are serving those over-the-air updates. I think one thing in my mind, when, coming from a software background, when I, arrived here, I was like, oh, over-the-air updates, great. That's just like a software update. That'll be super fast and instantaneous, and like we don't need to, that's just like releasing like an app update or, a backend change or something like that. It is not like that. It is a, more time-consuming process that, takes time to, there's so many things that can affect like the speed of that, when a frame gets that. And if you have features, as we do, if you have features that are, software features, we introduced some functionality earlier this year related to caption. So allowing people to caption their photos, which is something people have been asking for a long time and customers absolutely love. It's a very simple sort of table stakes thing, but the product metrics around this feature have completely blown my mind and surprised me. I'm like, yes, people want this. It will be great. But the reaction has been wonderful. But part of the reliance of that feature working is actually, the firmware on the frame being up to date and having a particular, or, being at a certain state or a certain release, a release version. And so when you have millions of frames out there, trying to, coordinate that and make sure that that is working as expected can be challenging and certainly new for me, particularly if you're talking about, if you're, we often will roll things out we might start a ramp with new users for this reason, where they're a new user, they've got a new frame, everything's up to date, everything's fresh, like, great, no problem. When we think about the complexity of like rolling something out that is like a frame app, a feature that interacts both like very, very directly, like with the experience that someone's having on the frame and also in the app, we have to consider that ramp strategy, that communication strategy to customers about, you have this feature, you might see it on the app, like we need to make sure that those things are in sync. And so that, that's not a recall, so maybe not that exciting story, not a dramatic story, but certainly I think like trying to navigate that ramp strategy based on, OTAs and making sure that we're communicating the right thing to customers and not creating a problem for our customer support team, because they care a lot, as they should. We want customers to be as happy with everything we build as they are, when they first purchase the frame and see those first photos of their friends and family on their frame. So trying to manage that was a learning for sure.
Well, and I think that for listeners that are in software and then haven't played in the hardware space, the difference between like an app update on an iPhone is that's a managed process. Apple gives you very hard guardrails, and it's a quick click of a button, or it can happen in the background. Updating firmware, the stakes are higher, as DeAndre mentioned. This is the thing that, if done improperly, can brick a device. And when I mean brick, I don't mean the user needs to unplug and plug it back in or hold a reset button down. This can make a device truly have to go in the trash because the manufacturer, even I couldn't recover one if a firmware update goes completely wrong. It will make that hardware insolvent. It is a brick. So I think the big challenge, and this is, again, one of those assumptions I have that maybe is also a question, Ashley, is you guys must have a fleet of all the models that you still support in a lab somewhere in various states of software that you can jump from a prior update to 3 generations ahead if someone hadn't connected it to the internet in a year and turned it on for the first time. And just for everyone listening, that amount of testing and quality assurance is a huge burden compared to what software quality is. And everyone that's in software knows the QA team is a huge team that needs lots of resources and is very important to great customer happiness. But when that's in hardware, you could not just have the client have to delete the app and reinstall it. This is like you have to either send them a new frame or convince them to buy a new one if something goes completely wrong.
Yes. That's a great point. We have, I kind of laughed when you said in a lab, but we have frames of, we have devices of, or we have like versions of everything that we have out in the wild today, actually in employees' homes. So in homes or in offices. So I actually, in this office, I'm in my co-working space today. I have 5 frames here, and then I have 5 or 6 frames at home, to the point where my children are like, why do we have so many things here? why do we, they love it, but also why? So we do something with those OTAs before we start ramping them out, or before we start turning them on, for customer facing, or external facing frames, where we have a set that we are testing, and pretty much all the employees are on
the beta test list.
Yeah, we're on these frames, and we let them run for quite a while. And there is check-in process, and we're monitoring the heck out of everything to make sure that what you described, that is a nightmare scenario of releasing something and then having frames bricked would be a catastrophe.
Yeah, those are the rough days.
Yeah.
Ashley, there's I think a huge lesson to be learned on really achieving like what I like the product market fit in the hardware space. And I think you alluded to it whenever you're kind of giving the example a second ago, whenever you were like, we launched this update. It was super small, super lightweight, just giving captions for the users. And all of a sudden that user, your metrics went up and to the right. And I think it's so telling that you guys are really looking deep into the analytics and, listening to the customer feedback that you're getting from the customer success team. A story that I always like to allude to when I'm talking to founders about this exact same thing is the story of Twitch. So Twitch has a bunch of users, and they're like, they've had every bell and whistle on this, streaming platform. Of course, they went from Justin TV to Twitch and so on. And Mike Seibel tells a story. I just love to retell it. And they're like, we'll build you whatever you want to make this experience better, and like the budget's endless. Like, you tell us, you want to change the colors, do you want to do all this kind of stuff? And of course, he says the same thing. He goes, they're like, hey, I bought a, 5-figure or more computer. I have this super nice webcam, and I'm shooting in like 780p or something like that, like super low quality. Just make the quality go up. And he looks to his co-founders, and they're like, seriously, like that's a dial on the hardware. Like, we just turn that up a little bit, and all of a sudden that changes that, and all of a sudden like their usage spiked, and then actually that change, that pivot really created Twitch. And so that kind of leads me into the question around like the network effect. And I think once you do that, right, once you make those key changes, I think that's where you guys are seeing the huge, not just customer retention, but the land and expand model. You guys don't even have to have a subscription, because you guys have recurring buyers within this network, and the network effect your guys' product creates. But I think that only comes with, whenever you've really achieved that product market fit. So I guess my question would be around just diving deeper into like that network effect you guys were able to achieve with Aura.
Yeah. So the network effect, kind of zooming, kind of going back in time a little bit. That network effect, I think, was, I really don't know if it was intentionally created, but it's baked into the product in the sense that you have one frame, you can connect many people to it, and all of those people, even if they don't have the frame in the home, are experiencing the goodness of Aura. And they could be experiencing the goodness of Aura, in the app. They could be experiencing the goodness of Aura in other ways, in the sharing of those photos. I think probably the most impactful way people are experiencing the goodness of Aura that are not in the home is that feedback. Is that feedback from the person who owns the frame and is calling them, is texting them. We have so many in telling them, oh my gosh, love this photo. This is so adorable. Or tell me more about what's going on in this photo. This looks like it's from a trip to Mexico. Tell me more about what's happening here. We have so many stories from customers, and also just internally, of family members who own the frame taking a photo of the frame, texting it to the person who's posted the photo and saying, love this photo, or, what I just said, like, what's happening here, tell me more, and really creating that connection. And, I do think about this a lot, and, I often talk about Aura really as a joy delivery device. In some ways, there is a competitive advantage. Obviously, it's beautiful. It fits into home decor. Like, there are all these wonderful things about it. But really the value that it delivers is that feeling. It's that feeling for the person who has it in their home, and it's that feeling for that person on the other end of that interaction who is like, who's feeling like, oh, I did a good thing and this feels good and I made someone happy with something as simple as, posting a photo or, putting a caption on that photo. And that is the reason, like, to me, like that's why there's product market fit is that goodness. And that is the reason that it has grown and has like had this growth trajectory that it has. And so, it's incumbent on us then, like on us at the company, to figure out how to double down on that. How can we create more interactions like that? How can, how can we continue it? How can we really continue to inspire joy for people? Can we give them additional ways? And that could be anything from like, can we give people additional ways to, communicate? Like, are there like other ways they could be communicating, between frame owner and, frame contributor? Or it could be something as like, can we increase, speed of photo to frame, or reliability, or give people additional ways? Not everyone wants to download an app. Some people may just want to, text book to a frame.
Shoot an email. Yeah.
Right. Shoot an email. Like all of these things, people have family chats, and, that where they post tons of photos. Like everyone has those chats. Is there space to have like, some sort of, photo conductor, within that app that is related to Aura that can send, intelligently send or direct traffic of those photos to frames. So it's all of those things. And I think, that story about Twitch is a great story, because, it is often, I think, like the very simple things. I can't think there can, especially in hardware, like there can really be this tendency of, there's so much new technology all the time, and there are things out there, and you can be, exposed to them, and we could build this, and we could build this, and we could build this. But I think when you have technology in search of a problem, this is not just hardware related, but like for anyone, like for any.
This is business related.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is how you really get to scale, because users want your product, not you want users.
Right, absolutely. And so for us, we have this very vocal user base. They are very happy, and they, are willing to talk to us and, tell us both what they want. We also have to like try to look into the future and think about like, how can we better serve these connection points? And sometimes I think it can be like sort of these basic foundational things, that really drive engagement. And it's, a surprise and amazing. And that's why I love product development. Or it can, and it also can be sort of things they, maybe haven't thought about, and unlocking new ways for people to do new things or new products, that, I don't know, serve the mission. But people, customers don't even know that they want yet. But once they're can get excited about it. So.
Yeah, and I love the way you guys you just described your North Star is that you guys just bring joy, and that's the North Star. Like that's it. We could do anything else as long as we bring joy. Let's keep doing that. And what I'm hearing is the way you do it is you engineer organic opportunities for connection, right? Yeah. You have I'll call it the Trojan horse effect. You have family member A, like me, who might buy this frame because I need a gift for Mother's Day for my mom. And we're now a multi-generational family. My sister's got kids and baby photos and all the group chats. So actually, you've nailed it. And I add all of my siblings to this group chat, and we're all uploading photos to my mom's frame. And all of a sudden, my brother-in-law might realize, this is a really useful way to get my mother-in-law, who I'm tangentially connected with, involved in my family's life with our new son. I bet you my mom would love this. And I just wanted to go really double click on how your network effect works, because it's organic in what your product delivers, and you aren't having to market that network effect. You're not having to have people like and share and do things.
Yes.
Because no, I'm inviting you this group experience that you might only upload photos at Christmas because it's a new toy and everyone's around the table and like throwing photos on it for mom. But it's that constant feedback that grandma now says, hey, I'm so excited I got to see Levi's first steps in the photo frame, like in the kitchen. I woke up to that on the photo frame. And that organic narrative bringing joy is what will encourage people to buy it for other people. And because you don't have software, you need that hardware network effect to sustain the growth, but you're not making anyone do it. It's just happening.
Yeah, it's 100%. And that was something really interesting to me when I started here. When I was telling people about my new job, there would always be someone who said, oh my gosh, we have, 10 Aura frames, spread out across my family. And the growth happened exactly the way that you're saying. That, someone bought it as a gift. 3 months later, there was another holiday or there was a birthday. And it just keeps coming up and, coming to mind. And it is, it's really special. I think it's special to hear those stories. It's certainly gratifying, when you're out just talking, at a networking event or, at a happy hour or at a dinner and people mention things like this. So it's really beautiful in that sense, but it's just rare air, I think, for, as a product person to be working on something like that. That is, I would also say, like, uniquely positive. We are bringing, or we're helping, foster or facilitate something that is so positive, but also able to build a business around it. Feels pretty incredible. I'd say it feels pretty incredible to me anyway.
No, that's incredible. I'm going to take us on a sidebar, DeAndre. Sorry, I just had throughout this entire discussion and narrative have a question, thought, etc. That's really explains how the hardware is connecting the software to make the magic happen. We all have iPhones or Android phones or smartphones of some kind. We can all send and receive photos and text. I am a part of 6 family group chats between all of my siblings that have kids and my in-laws that have kids. And I'm bombarded 24/7 because my wife is Swiss, so the sun never sets on the cute photo empire because my Swiss family is sending me photos overnight for the morning pictures. And I've become numb to it because it's constant. It's during my workday. It's in the wrong place, if that makes sense. And my phone is my work tool, right? And I'm just, through this conversation, I'm like, man, I really need to get an Aura frame and just drop that into all the family group chats, because then I could experience the family photos when I'm at the dinner table or getting home from work in the right place. And that can't happen with a pure software product. You have to have hardware that is furniture, that feels homey, that feels like the right place and space for family to deliver the experience you guys are delivering. And I don't know if you guys have talked about that, but to me, this is like the magic of what your hardware offers, is the right place for the conversation or the action.
The right place, and I think unlocking, all those photos that you're getting in those group chats, they're staying in those group chats. They're not going anywhere. If you don't have, a device like this that is able to display them. And that is really what this does. My husband will constantly say, oh my gosh, I'll post stuff on one of our mini frames, and he'll see a photo. He's like, oh, I haven't seen. And it's, we were both there. We were both on this vacation, but I took a different photo than he did on my phone. He said, oh, I didn't even know you had that photo. And so I think even it really allows you to continue to experience those things and re-experience those things. Otherwise, you're probably never gonna see those photos again. Maybe you'll see them, if they're automatically saving, or if you're saving them to Google Photos or iPhoto, they'll come up in memories. They'll come up in a memory slideshow. But if you don't have somewhere to display them, you're never going to get that. You're not never, but you might be less likely to get that surprise and delight element to it. And that is certainly something that the hardware provides. Absolutely.
I'll join you guys on this rabbit hole because now my brain's moving a little bit. So now we're completely off the rails. So I'm thinking through, we use a platform called Ramp. And I'm not sure if you guys use it, but Ramp is basically it helps with.
It's a business credit card, effectively, and we can assign it to everybody. Everyone gets their own Ramp card.
Yeah, everyone gets their own Ramp card, and then I can take a photo of my receipt, and then it will automatically take it to Ramp and things like that. Just it mirrors a little bit of the I think the ethos you mentioned a bit earlier around how can we make it more seamless to get the photos to the platform.
A frictionless environment.
And in the frictionless environment, I think it kind of mirrors that. And I think what would be really fascinating, and you guys might already do this, again, we're on a total rabbit hole right now, it's fine, is if, and I'm curious, like with AI and things like that, and how if you type in on like your iPhone, you could say like, maybe your mom or something like that, and it'll
Or
actually
pets, you're my pets.
or my dog or what have you, it'll kind of show that. And how typically to get access to your photos, you can say, allow all access to my photos. And now that the app has access to your photos. And I'm curious, even in the moment of taking the photo, if the app recognizes that it's a photo that would make sense to go onto the app, if it doesn't drop down a little thing or say, hey, is that photo you want to add to the Aura frame? That might be something you guys already do. There's probably a bunch of red tape in terms of Apple and things like that on doing that. But it just seems kind of interesting as an opportunity.
Yeah, we're doing a couple things, and some things are in actually more of a test or in an experimental phase. But so just kind of baseline, when you onboard onto the Aura app, you give permission like for your entire camera roll. We have, and this we rolled out kind of at the end of last year. Right as we were kind of entering our holiday craziness, people search. So this ability, and we use this, it's all on device, but we use this for folks. If people give us full access to their camera roll, we can, look at that camera roll and we can detect faces. So just kind of like right now, so popular faces will then show up kind of like you can filter by those faces when you're adding photos. Right now, we're just using it for adding photos to the frame. There are a ton of things that we could be doing with that we are not yet. So you could imagine like some foundational features very similar to what you're talking about, where you're building, you are building slideshows around, around specific people to run on the frame at specific times.
Like anniversaries.
Right, exactly. Anniversaries or the holidays from last year or my every time we go to Mexico for spring break every year. And in the lead up to that, my husband's like, I just want to see photos of Mexico from previous spring break so we can get pumped about going to Mexico again. I'm like, great. But like that kind of thing, or detecting, do you want to, when you're taking the photo, do you want to add something like this to your photo frame? The thing where, so like there's like this foundational thing, which I think caption, I would like also file captions into this bucket too. There's this foundational thing that people already expect. But then how can we build on top of that? How can we make that more engaging? How can we make that more interesting? What else can we do there? And then another thing, like kind of related to this, always makes me think of Ramp. We also use Ramp. I love Ramp.
Shameless plug for Ramp. Please sponsor us.
Great.
Please do.
This is great. But one thing we're experimenting with right now is, so the way that most people share photos today is like in life, forget about Aura, is via text message. So via these family chats that we've been talking about, or even a one-to-one interaction. So why wouldn't we not allow people to do that with Aura? Right, exactly.
I just want to add Aura to my group chats. That's all I want.
Right, exactly. So we are experimenting with a bunch of different things related to texting to frame, both allowing people, we have different things that we're experimenting with right now. One is allowing, assigning a frame or allowing you to, turn on a phone number for your frame that you could give to anyone. You could potentially put into that group chat. We have also worked on the inverse of that, where it's more of, you do have a phone number for your frame, but it's not a free-for-all, so the only people who can access it are invited to your frame, so a little bit more control. And we're kind of again, we're A/B testing all of this and kind of figuring out what's what. The challenge there, though, is obviously that when you send photos or any media via SMS or MMS, MMS certainly, SMS, it can get compressed. And so you could have people texting tons of photos to your frame. And even though our frame is, doing like making photos look amazing, really compressed photos, we're not miracle workers. Like really compressed photos that get really small are not going to look great on the frame. So now we are working on, and we're actually building this out right now. How can we get RCS, which is rich communication service? If you have, like as of like last year, like on your iPhone, you'll now start to see this when you're texting with Android users, like powered by RCS or something like.
Yeah, the green bubble is slightly better now.
Yes, the green bubble is slightly better, but what RCS like unlocks for us is nothing is compressed. So it's like fully preserving the quality of those photos. It unlocks videos, and then it also unlocks all sorts of cool functionality. You can build app-like experiences within RCS. Cool. You might have seen this in some companies are using this for marketing, but it's really like just starting to, carriers have kind of just unlocked some of this for companies.
As I think in shipping mostly, like in text shipping updates in RCS, like it's almost like an web app that message is updating.
You can tell the difference because there are interactive things. Like I have recently started seeing checkout for some of my
Shopify style
marketing,
stuff.
like shopping marketing. Like I've started to see like you can do one-tap checkout in the text message.
That's cool.
Right, super cool. And so you can imagine like if you have you have these families that, great, they have 10 frames that they might be connected to. They might not want to send every photo to all of those frames. They probably don't want to manage like a phone number per frame. Then how can we, kind of going back to like this idea of like, the train conductor, how can we enable Aura to be a part of that and, really seamlessly direct those photos to wherever users might want them to go? And I think that probably starts with like, giving, if they have, multiple frames, like giving them a menu and choices and like ways to do that, maybe setting default frames, doing things like that. This reminds me of Ramp a little bit when you get those incessant text messages.
Yep.
Right.
But then like the next step beyond that is how can we do that smartly? How can we do that in a way that is actually seamless where people
UX.
Right, exactly.
Yep. And this is Ramp. Ramp, I can go make a bunch of individual credit cards and give them to employees or use them for particular vendors. I can then categorize them within Ramp before they ever get to QuickBooks. So QuickBooks already says these 12 cards are always IT and internet expenses. These 12 cards are sales and marketing. Just like you guys could do with you could make one phone number that is a group of frames, right? But it's you guys in your app could have that management system where they're tied together, where Ramp does it on the back end with all the card numbers. Same with you guys could do with all the frames.
Right. And this is where like kind of going back to the philosophy of, listening to customers. Maybe customers don't want to be managing stuff in our app, and that's okay. Like, I think really it's like, what is that outcome? How can we achieve that outcome of connecting families? And if the way that they want to be managing that interaction or the way they want to be adding photos is really as seamless as, I just want to add this one over to my group chat and I want, the photos to be sent to X set of frames, and that's how I want this to work. That's great. Like, and if we can use technology to unlock that, that's, mission accomplished.
That's incredible. I just hope for you that Apple gives you an ability to tie into iMessage so they can still stay blue text threads.
Well, Ashley, we went off on a little bit of a journey, which I think ended up being actually super informational. My last question I typically ask, just advice for people in your fields, other hardware leaders, to kind of wrap it up here. I think this entire episode was full of a lot of anecdotes and examples. But if you want to just kind of if you could give a piece of advice to someone that's it's in the hardware space, what would that be?
Yeah, I think. Start with, if you're starting out, there's lots of shiny, cool things you can do with all sorts of different like emerging technology and hardware. Make sure that whatever you are building or whatever, that really you are building to solve a specific problem, and that you're not being, overly entranced by, there's always going to be a cool new gadget. And that's wonderful. And I love cool new gadgets. But unless it's really solving a problem for a customer, and unless you have that really crisp and clear, that is, that's, you know, you're not going to be successful. I think that's one piece of advice. Another piece of advice that I think Aura has done very, very well and differently, or it sounds like differently than other companies, is don't give away what could be your competitive advantage. Meaning, you know, the co-founders did not have hardware backgrounds. They, you know, both had, you know, software engineering backgrounds, data science backgrounds. And when they wanted to, you know, when they landed on this idea, or so they're kind of like iterating through what they wanted to build next, they pulled in experts. So we have someone who has been with us since the beginning and is still here on the executive team, who understands intimately, who runs all of our supply chain operations. We have the same thing is true of our chief creative officer. He came in very, very early and, you know, has built out and, you know, designed and runs this amazing like industrial design function. And you know, over the years, we have, you know, brought on engineers, you know, telling that touch bar story of like who are really scrappy and really able to do the work in a way that I think if you can find that expertise and bring it in instead of like giving it away to someone else and relying, I think particularly if you don't have the hardware background, having someone that you trust that is invested in the company in the same way that you as a founder are, is really, really important ultimately, particularly if like the primary thing you're going to do is, you know, build your business around this, you know, first hardware product or suite of hardware products.
Listen to your customer, build for your customer, create product market fit. Everybody, this is the Hardtech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Harakas, my co-host, Grant Chapman. And Ashley, thank you so much for being on the show. Tune in next week for the next edition of the Hardtech Podcast.